Hello again, Broncos country.
Really excited to chop up some Broncos with y'all this week.
Bourbon, Broncos, and no BS.
Orange Weekly.
It is that time, your favorite time of the week. We're not for the Raiders, Chargers, or Chiefs. So grab your brews and your fantasy league. We've got that blue and orange blood that you bleed. Like Lindsay, Sutton, and Judy. We are that Mile High Broncos country.
Orange Weekly. Fans, brews, and Broncos news.
Hello again, Broncos country. Kev Dan here for yet another episode of Bourbon, Broncos, no BS. Glad you're here tonight. We got a lot of stuff to cover because week 1 is finally here. Broncos will take on the Tennessee Titans Monday Night Football at 8:10 p.m. Mountain Time in Denver. So lots of stuff to cover. Really quickly first, before we get into that, I am once again here at Colorado Cork and Keg off the I-25 in Castle Rock. David and I are going to be broadcasting a couple games from here this season. The first one is going to be on September 20th when the Broncos take on the Steelers on the road. If you want to come on by, please do. Tell them that Orange Weekly sent you when you get here, and you'll get half off your first drink. And we also have a giveaway planned, and we'll explain some of that more later. But it's time to get into it. So, Matt and David, how you both doing tonight?
Good, buddy, man. How are you?
I'm drinking.
Yeah,
I think we all know why.
Yeah.
At this point, it's all of the comments thus far are about a single subject, and I'll let you guess which one.
Right. I want all of you to please just hang in there with us. We want to get to it, but I think it's important for us to let's start on something positive. We're coming up on the end of the offseason. This game's coming up. Let's see if you guys want to post any questions about, like, what are your thoughts about this game? I want to get to Vaughn, but obviously there's still some news coming out, so we want to catch up on that soon. So, David and Matt, thoughts about just us heading into this first game against Tennessee?
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how the team adapts to the news today, how they bounce back, and kind of, it sucks to lose your, inarguably at this point, your best player. But how the team responds to that is going to be really, really crucial. You've got to be in a next man up attitude about it if you're the rest of the guys, and you've got to be, ready to put this behind you and get ready for Tennessee, because that's what you're practicing for this week. You're not practicing to say goodbye to Von Miller for the season. You're practicing to play a football game finally, which is something we've been looking forward to for months and months and months. Didn't look like it was going to happen for a while. Now that you're finally so close, you've really got to be able to kind of refocus on what's going on and keep your mind on Tennessee.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see where the identity goes of the defense. If Von Miller really is up for this long, like, who's going to step up? And I think this game against Tennessee is a great time to show it, right? Because you're playing against a power running offense. So there's room for linebackers to make a name for themselves. And then you're playing against a quarterback who's kind of still unproven. So then the DBs can have, everybody can have a good day without Vaughn, and then see where the identity goes to, because it's a blow, but at the same time, like, this is still an excellent defense. Very hard to beat. So
yeah, there's still good players at every level of this defense. You've lost your superstar for sure, but those guys aren't just going to lay down.
So, I mean, you got to remember we have Coach Fangio as well, and you give him, a little less than a week to figure out essentially adjust the game plan for the defense to some degree. But you also give us some time to really understand what Vaughn's situation is and go out there and see who's available for us to bring in, because that's someone that you got to replace. I don't think we want to just stick with who we have. I think it's important for us to bring somebody in, maybe with a little experience at least, to help out that other side of Bradley Chubb.
Right. Yeah, and the depth there right now, you've got Jeremiah Toshu, who they brought in, former Charger. I know he's been on other teams too. He filled in decently last year. I think he started 5 games total last year. After the Bradley Chubb injury, they were just kind of scrambling to find anybody who could fill in and take up some of those snaps. And I think he had 3.5 sacks in his 5 starts. There's some depth there. You've got Malik Reed as well, who kind of came on last season and showed flashes in a couple of points, got a couple of sacks. But I think you're right, Kev. At the very least, the team should be looking into some outside options, like Terrell Suggs potentially still out there. Clay Matthews is another guy we talked about before the show who is at least available. Matt, who do you think among those guys who kind of moves the needle for you the most?
Oh man, definitely Suggs. Like, I know he's 37 right now, and last year he had not so, his season with the Cardinals wasn't as good. With the Chiefs, like, he's very short. I think he's a depth player, and I mean, he ended up being on a Super Bowl winning team. But nonetheless, I think he's still got something to give to a team, even if it's at a third down pass rushing situation exclusively. At least he's an experienced player who can get results there as a pressure point to replace some of Vaughn's production.
Yeah.
But otherwise, like, Jabal Sheard's another player that has good experience, play with the Colts, with the Patriots before that. Maybe Fangio can find a spot for him. He's a bit of a different player, but I don't know. How about you, Dave, man? What do you think?
Yeah, and what John's point is, with the cap space that we have, and we have a decent amount of cap space right now, about $25 million. But with what's anticipated to happen next year and the cap floor going down to potentially as low as $175 million, I know the Broncos want to keep that as much of that cap space and roll it over into next year as possible. You still got a long-term deal for Justin Simmons that you might want to do. So it's going to be the kind of thing where I expect them to not throw any money at anybody real crazy. I don't expect them to trade for a premier pass rusher who's on a big contract right now. That certainly I don't think is in the team's plans. A 1 year, $5 million or less deal is kind of what I expect of anybody who does sign, but it's got to come down to the fit as well as the money. Both of those guys that we talked about a little bit, Suggs and Matthews have at least some scheme fit in the 3-4. So that would be what I would look at first, is scheme fit over contract, but that's going to be something they definitely think about as they try to head into next year with as much cap room as possible.
There's also the option of just play with your depth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the Patriots have made dynasty by just next man up, right? So it could be Malik Reed, who just needs to step up, who brings somebody from the practice squad, or we sign a depth player, and kind of bring him up in the system, right? So, there's different ways that Fangio could go about this. It's pretty late in the year to invest in a premier position. Right. Like you're saying, like to teach the scheme, unless you would get somebody who knows the playbook inside and out, but it's going to be hard to find. So, I mean, for right now, Fangio might just go, let's play the next guy up like a Malik Reed, maybe change up the formations a bit. And then later on the season, we see a player who might be flashing somewhere and we do a move from there, right?
Yeah.
But you're right. We have to use the depth for this game. If we sign somebody tomorrow, they wouldn't be able to play until after they clear the COVID protocols, and then they could play hopefully against the Steelers in that second game on the 20th there. So, whoever plays this week in Vaughn's place, whoever they bring up and say, hey, you're that next man, Malik Reed probably, look, this could be your chance to say, no, you don't need to go find somebody. I'm that guy for you. So there's a little bit of pressure there, and it kind of gives them a chance to say, well, we have to wait anyway, so maybe we go out and find somebody for depth. But,
that's a good point.
Bring you up, and so it's just something else to think about while we're doing this.
Yeah, really good point. And I think they're gonna, it's gonna have to be, especially a guy like Jarrell Casey. This game in particular, you're gonna have to rely on him, and he already said there's gonna be some extra juice in him for this particular game anyway. Yeah. But with Bradley Chubb being talked about as being on a snap count potentially, just as he works his way back, he's not 100% yet. Yeah, so he's definitely not going to be an every down player this upcoming game, and so that's something we'll have to kind of monitor. But you're totally right, Kev. A guy like Malik Reed or Atoshu, who we talked about earlier, is just going to have to step up this game. There's no other way around it, because the Broncos have some good defensive linemen, but as far as that pass rush goes, they really do count on their outside guys.
Well, and it kind of goes to everything we talked about before, is stopping Derrick Henry. So, Vaughn probably wouldn't be too much involved in the run game, but if they have to fall back and go back to that pass game, because let's say we do shut down Derrick Henry, which I think we have very reasonable assumption that we can. Well, now how are you going to, take care of the passing game? Right. And that's where you're going to see those guys need to really step up and take care of business, because if they get a passing game going, well, then there's no need for them to run Derrick Henry down the field 50, 60, 800 times, so.
Man, the Titans don't really scare me with a passing game outside of A.J. Brown, who can make some big plays happen. Like Corey Davis, Adam Humphries are listed as the other two receivers, and Jonnu Smith, who I think can have a great year, but he's, I don't know. I just don't think this week's going to be the
my only counter to that is we have such a new backfield that if I was Tennessee and said, okay, we have to fall back to our passing game, let's try and exploit the fact that this is the first time these guys are in a game situation together back there. So, you know what? Hopefully they would say, let's do this. And then our secondary, just Simmons, everyone just like demolishes them. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is what we expect. But so it's going to be, this has an interesting dynamic, unfortunately, but it is.
Yeah. And it's going to be a team effort. The guys on the back end are just going to have to cover a little bit longer, probably. The linebackers are going to have to, know their assignments and be in their zones a little longer. And the rest of the defensive linemen are just going to have to try and step it up and take over, as much of that burden as they can.
How about even the idea of bringing back Todd Davis?
Well, but Todd Davis is an inside line.
I know it's another position, but I'm just saying, like, you lost one big presence on the team. Maybe we could bring back another one to kind of fill that void, perhaps. Another experienced player who knows the system. He's out of position for sure, but, is this something that Fangio might think of doing?
So, first off, Andrew asked earlier, and sorry, Andrew, I just now got back to it. Why did Todd Davis get cut in the first place? So, he hasn't been picked up by anyone, but pretty much when Jackson was decided that, hey, he's going to be the main guy out there, there's really no need to keep Todd Davis at that point, right? So now in this situation, I don't know, do you guys think that that'd be something that we even consider?
Well, I tend to doubt it. It doesn't seem to me like the kind of move that Fangio makes just for the sake of having continuity in the locker room. I don't, it could be, but Davis, I think, probably got cut because they were looking for a little more athleticism at his position. You've got Alexander Johnson out there, and he's great, and he can do kind of whatever you wanted him to. But when you saw him go out and get Mark Barron, I think what you saw was them trying to indicate, at least in theory, we want to get more athletic at this position. We want to get faster at that position. And so to me, Todd Davis, a guy who played pretty well last year, but also kind of, especially in coverage, you could tell he'd really lost a step. So it's, to me, you wanted to get more athletic at that position. I don't know much about the guy they traded for in Austin Calitro, if that's even how you pronounce the name. But I don't really see that as a fit for the team going forward. I think when they said goodbye to Todd Davis,
it was a goodbye. Yeah.
Yeah. I think they were probably done.
That makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, man, Austin Calitro, I pulled him up. Like, he's played, he's played for a bunch of different teams, mostly on the practice. He's played for the Jets, the 49ers, the Seahawks, the Browns, and the Bengals as a practice squad player, or like an off-season member. And then he's played for the Seahawks, the Jaguars, and now he's with the Broncos. So this guy is like
depth.
I don't know.
None of that to me screams
could be a special team player.
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I mean? Like we
absolutely.
needed a good special team player here.
Mhm.
So, that might be a thing, but I don't know, man. I think you're right. I think Todd Davis is gone for a reason. Mark Barron is going to be an upgrade based on athleticism alone, but what happens now? It's going to be really interesting to see.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, with a lot of new
Hey,
pieces on this defense, that continuity that you were hoping for to have with Vaughn is now gone, and you just kind of gotta hope for the best.
This is a young defense to begin with. I mean, especially when you're looking at the backfield and some of the guys we had last year. Their second. I mean, first off, it's the second year with Coach Fangio to begin with. Now, with it being Fangio, he's going to be able to work some stuff out. I have the. If we had some other coach, I would be like, this is really scary. But look, it's early enough. It's still unfortunate, but we're a week out from the first game. There's plenty of time to recover, and I think our defense is strong enough to begin with. I do want to really quickly put the plug in that the post-off-season podcast is up on SoundCloud, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, Google Podcast, and iTunes. So go check that out. Tanner and I break down the post-off-season moves and kind of what the Broncos did. So check that out. And if you're watching, appreciate you guys tuning in. The Bourbon Broncos No BS here at Orange Weekly. So normally, I think I can say this for all three of us up here. We drink on the show for fun, but tonight it's kind of a necessity. So while you grab your drink and sit back and try to relax, post some comments and questions. We might touch on Vaughn a little bit later tonight, but there's still a lot of stuff coming up with the Broncos taking on the Tennessee Titans. And I think one thing that we haven't touched on much yet, and believe me, we can definitely get back to the defense later, but the offense. So what are you guys expecting from this really young offense? I think there's a lot of key places there that we need to look at. I mean, obviously, we could talk about Drew Lock all day, right? But there's some interesting cryptic messages sent out by Noah Fant today, which could be giving some hints as to how we can expect Pat Shurmur to use Noah Fant in the offense. So what do you guys think about that?
Well, so Fant's kind of was on Instagram. Was it not a tweet? I think it was on Instagram.
It's one of the Insta tweets.
Right.
Tweetgrams. I don't know.
He instantly tweetgrammed that there was exciting stuff planned for his role in this offense this season. Yeah. Which to me kind of just signifies that he's going to be used like a traditional Pat Shurmur tight end is used, which is all over the formation. He could be split out wide as a boundary receiver. He could be in the slot, which I think we should expect a lot of. Interestingly, the first Broncos depth chart of the season listed Jerry Jeudy and Tim Patrick as co-starters on one side. So I think we're going to see a lot of slot looks from Jeudy and from Fant. And especially, early in the season when you're trying to just keep teams on their heels any way that you can. I think we're going to see a lot of different looks from Noah Fant. He's the exact type of tight end that can do those things. Yeah. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see how frequently he's lined up in different positions other than the traditional tight end spot at the end of the line.
And look at the all the tight ends that were signed by the Broncos with Nick Vanette, Jake Budd, and Albert O. Like, there's a lot of depth there. So even if you had Fant as like a big slot, which you're right, I think he'd be an extraordinary player at that position. He could even line up like Gronk used to do at wide receiver, right? Just because he's got that body. So, you have him, and you can still get two good blocking tight ends on the formation, or you can get, another good pass catching like Jake Budd or Albert O, so it gives so much variety.
Yeah.
So it's almost like you have a tight end group and a receiver group, and you can almost roll like both units. Like it's going to be a really fun offense to watch.
Very much
really
so.
Fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For this game, though, I'd say that the offensive line though is going to have it's work cut out for them. And Jeffrey Simmons is the reason they traded Jarrell Casey, because Jeffrey Simmons, like last year when he was drafted, he was coming off a pretty bad knee injury, but his potential was like top 5 sort of pick. He is an extraordinary athlete, so he's going to be pretty good, a big challenge for the guards. And then Jadeveon Clowney signing, he's back with Vrabel, who was his position coach in Houston, right? So he's going to be very familiar with this defense. So that's going to be a big challenge too for the young offense.
Yeah, very much so. Go ahead, Kevin.
No, so I was going to say, there's a lot of this offense that really needs to blend and come together, right? And that comes with experience. So, you know, do you have a feeling that one group might take a little longer than the other? So, Drew Lock with the receivers versus, the running backs in the front line or just the offensive line in general. Is there a group out there that you're more worried about taking longer to develop than the rest?
Hmm. Hmm.
Probably the wide receivers to me.
And I think that ties into Drew Lock and some of the, I don't want to say issues, but a little bump in the road in terms of his confidence at the end of last season, right? So how has he been able to overcome this whole COVID situation and building that reputation and relationship with the wide receivers that they are just, totally connected the whole time they're out there. And when he makes a mistake, because guys, he's basically still a rookie, he's going to make mistakes. Is he going to be able to overcome that and trust the relationship he has with those receivers and make sure they're still on the same page and move forward? Or are they going to, take a step back here and there and just never really progress it until maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 games down the road?
Mm-hmm.
It's a good question. I think the offensive line is going to be pretty solid because, like, Lloyd Cushenberry is really the only, new player there. Like, Graham Glasgow's a new player, but he's an experienced guard. And with such a great coach, like, I think they'll be okay. And the receivers, it's going to take some time. It's going to take a few games, and like a game speed is completely different than practice speed, even in scrimmages. So it's going to be Locke's going to have to adjust, but he's got experience with Sutton, so at least he's got somebody he can rely on, right?
Right. Yeah, Fant too.
Fant as well.
Yeah, but you're right. It's just going to be, Judy, I think, is going to be one of the least affected rookie receivers of the class by this offseason. But it's still going to take some time for that to come together as a group. It's just not going to be instantaneous. I would expect them to. I mean, they're going to try and come out and try to throw the ball. But if they relied on the run game a little more heavily in the first couple of games, that would not surprise me either. Like we talked about last week, there's a little more continuity there just because you've kept your offensive line coach, and he's generally the one who plans the run game. So, you've got a couple of new offensive linemen, but like you said, Matt, Graham Glasgow's a vet in the league. He knows how to do his business.
Yeah.
So we're just going to have to find out. It's going to bear watching as the season goes along. I don't know.
So I think Daniel's comment or question here overall, look, we know that we're going to probably struggle in the first 3-4 weeks, right, until we get in a rhythm. But overall, is there some short statement you guys can give in terms of what can you guys expect? Because for me, that answer is this is a year that's going to set the tone moving forward. Do I think that we can possibly be strong wild card contenders? Yeah, but moving forward this year, we need to set that really strong foundation that we can move forward with, build that momentum, build that trust within the team there. So that's where when I think about week 17 and where the Broncos offense is, that's what I hope I'm seeing is something to really look forward to the next year.
Right. And I think at this point, getting back to Von Miller just a little bit, I think the ceiling for this team is just not what it was before this. Hi, Ayla. It's always good to see. Always good.
She's talking about me, by the way. Sorry, she's talking about how pretty I am. She just doesn't.
Literally, nobody has ever used that word to describe you, and we're not starting now. Yeah, I think the ceiling for this team, unfortunately, goes down quite a bit without Vaughn in there. I think it would be easy to talk about this as a possible fringe playoff team with him healthy all season. I don't know if I can see it anymore. But like you said, Kev, if we can see on offense, visual confirmation of progress throughout the season and towards the end of the season, a team that can go out there and score 30 points on anybody, that's really what I'll be looking forward to the most, just that kind of growth.
So, David, you do have one of my friends, John, here, apparently is jumping ship and joining Team David or Team Puffball, right? Puffball?
That's right. Correct? That's right. We're gonna have to get John a hat.
Puffball here.
We can make that
And
work.
I do appreciate how realistic you're being, because let's face it, if Jared was here, he'd probably immediately just say, well, we're not mathematically eliminated yet. So
No, Jared would be saying we're 16-0 until we're not. So
The ultimate.
no, I think that's a good point. I would like to think that when it comes to Vaughn being out, and if it's still, I don't know if it's officially official, but knock on wood, I don't know. But would that put some pressure on the offense to say, you know what, we did lose the top player, at least on the defense, if not overall. We need to make sure we do our part, and maybe that would help them, work things out faster, put some pressure on them, or what?
yeah, and it's a long season. I don't want to, get into it and say we're doomed now, but at least, not very.
Told you.
Yeah. Yep, you're right.
You. Thanks,
He also made a comment about Team Puffball. Yep, that was it. I wasn't going to dignify it with a response while Team Visor is not even here. But that's fine, Jared. Go ahead and don't show up and then throw rocks. That's great.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
I'm so
What do
glad
you
I have
think,
it. This is numbing my pain right now.
Yeah. We got to laugh to keep from crying, right, boys?
Always. I don't know. I really like this offense. Like, Shermer, my God, Pat Shermer has a really good offense for like a young group. And I don't think he's ever had such dynamic athletes on any of his teams that he's coached in his career. So I think he's going to have a lot of fun with this group. And like recently, the trend with quarterbacks has been that second year is a big bump. I think Baker Mayfield is the only, pretty much the only one that we haven't seen take a bump in his second year. But otherwise, like Mahomes did, Lamar Jackson did, even Carson Wentz did, those years ago. So Drew Lock is, if he does well, man, he could do very, very well. And Kev, I think you're right in the sense that, like, man, if the Broncos defense took a hit, it's time for the offense to step up and maybe carry the load. Maybe the identity goes to a really dynamic offense. So, I'm being realistic. I don't know if the playoff chances are as good anymore. However, I wouldn't be surprised if we still made like a lot of noise on the offensive side, because this group is like young, dynamic, and exciting almost at every position, even in the depth. Even just looking at the running game, like there's 3 starting running backs on this team, like Freeman, fine. But like he's still a great power back, and I think this is an offense to watch this year. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So the one reason that, and I do agree with what you guys are saying. The one reason where I say that this team is probably at least very competitive for that wild card spot is because, remember, guys, the playoff rules have changed this year. So instead of the 12 teams going to the playoffs, it's now been up to 14 teams. Where only the number 1 seed from each conference gets the bye. So there is that extra team there, and that might be enough to edge us into the playoffs there, which, I know this is way down the line, but it's something to keep in mind as we progress through the season. And, where I've said the last 3 weeks or maybe even longer that the defense is going to be what, sets us up in a position in the first 4 weeks to help our offense come along. I do think that added pressure to the offense is going to pay off in the long run, at least to some degree, because, Drew Lock can't just, the whole offense can't walk out there and be like, yeah, well, our defense keeps making stops, so we have time to make mistakes and learn. And not to say that that'd be their exact mentality, but to put it out there in layman's terms, basically, of they have to find a way to help the defense win the game. Mm-hmm. They can't rely on the defense to win the game while they make mistakes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's going to be an interesting one for sure. But I think we've got the running game to at least, stay on the field long enough to give the defense a rest. With Gordon and Lindsey back there, my Lord.
Yeah, there's weapons there. I think we can definitely take advantage of some of that, especially week 1. Tennessee's got an okay defense.
Tennessee's better than a lot of people think. They're the AFC runner-ups.
Yeah,
so don't forget that. And I mean, yes, Derrick Henry carried that team in the last half of the season.
Right.
But that defense, man, it's still, it's a stout defense. It's still stopped the Ravens in the playoffs, which I mean, apparently anybody can do, but it's still a good defense. So,
but
we can't come in saying that it's going to be an easy game because Tennessee's stout, man. They've got an idea.
Hey, everyone.
They're running with it.
Yeah. Hey, everyone, quick halftime break here at Orange Weekly. So first off, keep posting your comments and questions. Lots of stuff to talk about. I know there's some bad news out there, but look, football is back. We have some positive things to talk about just in that realm alone. I don't know. The three of us might touch on some of our own fantasy draft picks that we made this last week. I'm sure you hear about my pretty colorful charts that I had print out in different shades of gray. At least it was to me. But really, guys, hey, I'm here at Cork and Keg here in Castle Rock, Colorado. Right off the highway, guys. So if you come on down, tell them that Orange Weekly sent you, you're going to get half off your first drink. David and I will be here on September 20th for the Broncos versus Steelers game. Come on down, hang out with us while we call that game here on Facebook Live and everything for you guys. So just something else for you to tune into while we're doing that. This Monday night, we are doing the pre-game show 1 hour before kickoff on Monday Night Football, as well as our halftime hash. And Jared and Matt are going to be coming out with our pre-game podcast here in the next couple of days. So, guys, we are in full swing here. I know this font thing sucks, but we are moving forward full on.
I will also be featured on the pregame.
Oh, that's right. I forgot that you were jumping on there. That's right.
Thank you, Kev. That's
sorry, David.
Well, you know what? I'm not a team puffball.
No,
I'm not team puffball, so I tend to just move on. I know. I'm secretly team visor.
No, I know. Your team stuff that sausage into your mouth just as fast as you can every time you go to the Cork and Keg, which is also a fine team to be on. But you can be on that
comments
and still be on Team Puffball. I think you could. Yeah, we'll talk about that off the air. That's
Daniel, anyway. You must be a good guy. That's pretty fantastic. Glad you're watching, man.
Yeah, that must be
move on to Garrett. Garrett has a good question here, though, guys. What do you think?
I think he's going to do great, man. 1,000-yard receiver this year.
Yeah.
And I drafted on my team for a reason because I think he's going to be an excellent receiver.
And I want to trade for him for that same reason. But anyway.
I think he hits at least 750 as far as yards go.
That's his floor.
An over-under of 4 touchdowns. Because once you get 4, once you're talking about 5, 6, 7 touchdowns, that's a pretty big season for a wide receiver.
Yeah.
So that would be my over/under for him as far as that goes. He's just Garrett. I think he's a guy who, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, but is going to have less trouble adjusting to the league as far as his rookie counterparts go. Just because his route running is so fantastic, and you just keep hearing veteran defensive players from the Broncos over training camp talk about how hard it was to defend this guy, how hard it was to anticipate what his routes were going to do, because he could sell one route and then run a completely different route better than most players who are in the NFL already.
That's sick.
Yeah, absolutely. So, that to me at least tells me he's going to be a guy who's going to be open, and the rest of it depends on can your young quarterback progress through his reads enough to find him. Because as much as I believe in Judy, I don't know that he's going to be the number one option on a lot of routes as far as it goes this season. I think Cortland Sutton's going to take the number one looks on a lot on this fair share of targets. So it's just going to be relying on Drew Lock to be able to get through his reads and find Jerry Jeudy, because Jerry Judy's going to be open.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, man. And I think another thing with him is his ability to just work between the numbers. Like, he's placed in the slot for a reason. Like, Henry Ruggs is going to be primarily an outside receiver. CeeDee Lamb is going to be primarily an outside receiver. And that kind of limits your ability to play. But like Jerry Jeudy, man, he won't be the first read, but he's going to be the number 2. At least maybe with 3 next to Fant or something. But 750, I think, is his floor. He could go up to 1,200 yards, I think. Like 4 touchdowns, I'd bank 5. But I think he's going to be a lot like that team is also built for the red zone with different players, with Sutton, with Albert O, with Noah Fant, with the running game. So maybe 4 touchdowns might be reasonable, and then he's going to get all his yards like between the 20s.
Yeah,
he's going to dominate that area. But he's Jerry Jeudy he could be one of these like great receivers that gets inducted in the Hall of Fame one day.
Yeah, absolutely. He has that ceiling for sure.
Yeah.
So one other thing really quickly, guys, take another quick pause here. Our own Jared admitted a couple years ago that he just sucks at sports betting so much that our really good friend Ray stepped in, and he is great at sports betting and everything like that. So we do have a new podcast for all those who are like Jared and suck at sports betting. Ray does a great job on that podcast called Ragers, giving you an idea of what the betting lines are for that upcoming Broncos game, what picks he's taking, and why. So go ahead and check that out, guys, and just try to be better than Jared. I'm pretty sure you're going to win some money off of Ray
Yeah,
Not
yeah. Ray's
anything. But
Ray's real good at helping you win money. He helped me win some money last season, and it's always good to get Jared some help, no matter what is going on, because Jared needs a lot of help, just no matter what you're talking about. So it's always good to see somebody kind of step in and give Jared a hand.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, let's keep moving on. Hey, keep posting those comments and questions, guys. Remember, we are here to talk to you, not at you. We're all about that fan and viewer connection interaction. So let's see. What else have we not really talked about yet, guys? Any other ideas in terms of, or maybe concerns moving forward against this Tennessee team in general? We haven't really talked about what Tennessee has really done this offseason. So any points there, or just other kind of big picture thoughts as we move into the first week here?
And we'll get into it a little more in the pregame podcast, obviously. But we should talk about the Jadeveon Clowney signing a little more in depth, just because that was very recent news. It just happened this week. It sounded like Tennessee was not the only suitor for his needs. There were a couple of very odd sign and trade possibilities out there for the Saints and the Ravens, where he could have ended up with either team. But it turns out Tennessee's the team that offers him the most money. So that's where he ends up going. He's a guy who, it's
Alfredo.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Preach, buddy, preach.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's a guy who you on the one hand you're happier to get him now than you would be if he signed with the Saints, because we do play the Saints this season, and if you gave him a little more time to get acclimated in that defense, it's all the better for him. At the same time, he's played with. I always want to call him Mike Munchak. What's his name?
Vrabel.
Thank Mike.
Yeah,
Mike
that guy.
Yeah. He's played with Mike Vrabel before. He probably knows the system decently well.
Yeah.
So it's the kind of thing where if you're expecting to see a lot of rust from him week one, maybe not the best bet on your part. Don't expect him to come out looking like he doesn't know where he's supposed to be, like he's lost. One of the really underrated parts of his game, I think, is his run stopping.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and Matt, I wanted to get your perspective a little bit more on this. Are you more concerned about his pass rush or his run stopping at this early point in the season?
I would say his pass rush right now, just because Garrett Holds is still Garrett Holds.
That's true. And then,
yeah, I've given him his name back temporarily until he loses it again. So
yeah, he's got another chance.
It's no, man. He's Garrett Holds. He is Garrett Holds until he is no longer Garrett Holds.
Okay, do we need to pull up the Pro Football Focus stats though? He was improving at the end of the season though.
He was improving. Does not mean still improving.
Right, and the other part of the problem to me is if they just even if Garrett Bowles is really really effective in this game on the right side, you've got Elijah Wilkinson.
Exactly.
It doesn't take a rocket scientist to say our pass rush from the left side is not working that well, but this guy on the right is totally exploitable, and we have Jadeveon Clowney.
If he's doing Jadeveon Clowney, he can line up in the 3 or the 5, right? So he could be lining up against Glasgow or against Reisner. Like, there's a lot that he can do.
Yeah.
His running game is like underrated and incredibly respectable. Like, he is a fantastic run stopper.
Mm-hmm.
But for this game, I'm more worried about the fact that he's going to be coming around the edge against like I think he's bigger and stronger than Garrett Bowles is, and Elijah Wilkinson. Again, he's a great player, but it's really hard to stop Jadeveon Clowney. So, Locke may have to be a little bit more on edge this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Get the ball out quick.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what extra pressure does that put on Drew Lock to maybe say, hey, that right side is going to collapse sooner than I think? And look, you're saying everything I was saying last season, okay, and probably the season before that. And even I think in one of these recent podcasts, I talked about how, yeah, his stats improved, but did Garrett Bowles really improve, or was it the fact that we had a mobile quarterback that wouldn't stand there for 5 years, which would draw the holding penalty or whatever, right? So,
Of course.
but we didn't pick up his 5th-year option, so this is kind of a proving point for Garrett Bowles of doesn't even deserve to stay in the league. Is any other team even going to be interested if we decide to cut him at the end of the year and he doesn't really improve? So
For sure.
That extra pressure might move him in the right direction, but something to keep in mind.
I would not be at all surprised to see the Broncos not re-sign Garrett Bowles and then see him sign with another team that sets the left tackle market. I think it is just that hard to find left tackle talent in this league.
Yeah.
So it would be very shocking to me if he did not get a big money contract from somebody this offseason.
Just because of his position value.
Right. And the fact that he holds a lot, but he doesn't completely fall on his face at the position. And that alone is so valued in the poor offensive tackle market right now. He's going to get paid by somebody.
Yeah.
But
So, and this is a hypothetical. Let's say that he doesn't necessarily improve, but he doesn't regress. Kind of similar stats to what we saw in the last 4 games of last season, right? Would you be willing to re-sign him based off what you just said, or is it time to draft somebody else and replace him?
And that's the problem. If he doesn't, if he shows the level of play that he showed over the last 4 games of last season, somebody's going to sign him to a way out there deal. Like somebody's going to throw crazy money at him.
Of course.
Yeah. So
but this is where we go in circles. Did he really get better, or did we finally have a quarterback that could roll away from that side?
Sure.
And that made him look better.
But in a market this bare of talent, that's going to matter less than the stats on the page, which say he didn't give up a sack and he didn't have a holding penalty in those last weeks.
So the thing listen, the left tackle market next year is going to include Trent Williams, Russell Okung, David Bakhtiari, Alejandro Villanueva, Ronnie Stanley will probably get re-signed. Ty Nishiki, I can't say that name properly, for the Bills. Cameron Fleming's still decent. There's going to be some big older names. So maybe it's going to be a year where Elway's going to go after one of these players, right? I think most of them will get signed quickly, but Garrett Bowles is still 29. He hasn't really proven himself to be a starting caliber, high-end left tackle. I say you move on and you find somebody else.
Right.
Yeah. Draft again. Look at the history around. They drafted Lloyd Cushenberry and Dalton Reisner, both in the second round.
Yeah.
You could get a starting left tackle in that second round of the draft next year.
Yeah. So. Yeah, we'll just have to see how it goes. You hope you're not in a position to draft Penei Sewell. But if that's the way the season goes, then you take that guy and you run.
That's it.
So that kind of, and I don't want to overstep what we've done on the post off-season podcast yet, but I think it's clear that there's been a real shift in John Elway's focus. And we had said on the show how many years where it was clear that John Elway's mindset was focused on, we just are a few key pieces away from going back to the Super Bowl. When all of us back here are shouting, no, we're not.
Yeah.
Stop signing big, 1 or 2 big players and think it's going to fix everything. Mm-hmm. And that mindset has really shifted towards, look, we got to draft, but we got to draft the right type of players. Maybe they're not the absolute best on the college team or the high school football team, but they gave the most effort. They were the leaders, they were the captains, and they showed that right attitude. So I honestly would be okay if we go out in the draft and pick somebody else out versus try to sign somebody else. I'd rather spend a year or 2 with a new rookie that has that right attitude. We've seen how well Elway's been drafting the last 2 years, and it's kind of based off of that attitude that he has now of really building this team up from the ground up. So I would not be surprised if that's exactly what we do, is cut Garrett Bowles and say thanks, but we need to move on.
Yeah, and consider that maybe next year we'll finally get Jawan James. You know what I mean? But if he comes back next year, then that right tackle spot now becomes solid, and Elijah Wilkinson can be that depth on the left. Where he's been solid depth, right? So it's there's options there, but I think Garrett Bowles is just not the answer. The guy needs a fresh start. The Broncos need a fresh start.
Well, and one of the things you mentioned, you put Russell Okung's name out there as a guy who's going to be available next year. That's a guy who we already tried out there, and it's gonna, you can't. What I'm trying to say, we tried him. He didn't work out. He did not play terribly while he was here, but by any stretch of the imagination. But it was just not a guy who we brought in and said, this is going to be our long-term answer now. And that's kind of the way the tackle market is right now. I don't think there's anybody out there, with the possible exception of Ronnie Stanley, who there's literally no way that guy actually hits the open market. It's just not going to happen. So it's that kind of thing where I really agree with you guys. I think you have to draft at that position, get a guy who you really, get your scouts in the room and trust their evaluation, because you want a guy who's going to be there for the next 10 years, not a guy who you're renting and hoping. You don't want to be crossing your fingers at this position any longer. We've been doing that at the tackle spots for what seems like the better part of a decade now.
It's hard to find good tackles, though. That's just the thing. A lot of teams do that, So
Yeah.
the Broncos aren't like alone in this. Man, it's hard to find quality starting offensive linemen in this league. They are sparse.
Yeah, for sure.
For
sure. And we'll just have to see how it goes. That's the way the college game is going now. With spread offenses the way they are, there's almost nobody that teaches a pro-style blocking for offensive line.
Exactly. Yeah. So the position has been changing, but I mean, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Okay, I got a question for both of you then. We just did a fantasy draft last night. Was the last night?
2 nights ago.
Who was? Yeah. Who was your favorite pick on your team? And which pick did you find were surprising that you got, like a steal? What was your biggest steal, and what's your favorite pick?
Oh boy, see, mine are both the same answer, so I'm going to try and think of a secondary.
Yeah, be creative. Come on.
Yeah. Let's say then that my most surprising pick that I was happy to see there was Lamar Jackson, and end of the third round is a little bit high to be drafting a quarterback unless it's either Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson, I think. But that's where I was it was a snake draft. I was that, tail end of the first round, top end of the second round kind of guy. And so, I had to kind of decide either it's now and I pick this elite talent, or it's, I picked Matt Stafford in the 7th round and just kind of see where that gets me. I ended up with Matt Stafford anyway, but I was pretty happy to have elite talent at the quarterback level.
No, and how did it fall to you?
You know what? I'll tell you. Somebody else drafting in our league, for reasons best known to that person, we don't know and we'll never know. Had the pick, I believe, right before me, instead of Lamar, picked Tom Brady, which is
that pick, not me. Okay.
No,
I thought we were going somewhere else with that.
Oh no, we'll dissect Kevin Claflin pick later on.
But that Tom Brady pick before Lamar Jackson, man.
Right. If you're picking Tom Brady before Lamar Jackson, I don't care what round you're picking him in. You've got to kind of go back and reevaluate your decisions there.
That's a good question, Brian. I think that Draymond is really quick off the line, but he's a bigger bodied player. So if we were to put him at the edge, it would be like, weak side edge, a bit tighter. He could rush, but then it would change the way the linebackers would have to play. So it's not a bad idea. I think that Fangio is going to become a lot more creative, man, with his defensive line depth and find ways to fill that void from Vaughn. So you may actually see Draymond Jones lining up on the edge sometimes. I just don't know if he would be a replacement player.
Yeah, I think if you see some more four down lineman fronts, that would definitely be an idea, is kicking Dre out to one of those edge spots, because I think Bradley can rush from a defensive end spot.
He can rush from his hand in the dirt. He can rush from standing up. So you might get a line that's sort of shifted to the one side where Chubb is standing on one edge and then Draymond's hands in the dirt on the other edge, right? So
yeah, for sure.
It's gonna Fangio's just gonna get creative. That's it. But yeah, so Lamar Jackson, what was your biggest or your favorite?
Honestly, I think my favorite pick was Julio Jones, just because of how much it pissed you off, Matt. Honestly, I was, it was the end of the first round. All the, the hugest name of the huge names at running back and receiver were gone, but there's still kind of that second tier of guys who were this will work as my number one guy at this position. Seeing how mad you were at the fact that I got to pick Julio Jones was really the icing on that cake for me.
Yeah, I took it personally. So,
yeah. And honestly, I didn't mean it personally, but after the fact, now that I think about it, you should take it a little bit personally.
No, I sure did, but that's okay. I've somewhat forgiven you.
Good. Okay. Good.
So we'll see. Yeah,
we'll see.
All right, Kev, what about you?
I think overall, Nick Chubb was still there in what round was that? Mid round 2, late round 2. So that was kind of impressive. look, by the time we started drafting, defenses in the 15th out of 16 rounds, the Bears were still there. And I know they're not, I guess, ranked really high per the experts or whatever, but look, that's still a really solid defense. Of course, somebody got the Broncos defense before me. And, here's the thing, though. These guys, everyone watching, these guys were going to put together a drinking game based off of how many Broncos I drafted. And it's not that I purposely didn't avoided drafting Broncos, but I had 0 on my team. So
Which
unfortunately, we stayed a little too sober.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted the Broncos defense, and I wanted Jerry Jeudy because I got him in my other league. But you know what? That's fine.
Oh, I have Jerry Jeudy.
But look, with Henry, the Chargers tight end, I think that could pan out to be pretty good. And although auto draft got Josh Allen for me, I do have Aaron Rodgers in my backup. So
yeah, I have questions about how auto draft managed to pick Josh Allen.
I think I had him in my queue because I was considering him, and because I ran out of time.
That must be the only explanation, because when you drafted him, the auto draft still had like 7 or 8 quarterbacks that just objectively you have to put ahead of Josh Allen, like on the list. So I couldn't, there was no possible way. You must have had him in your queue.
I did, and I wasn't messing with the order of people in my queue, and he was just the most recent one up there that I put in there. But I did get Aaron Rodgers later on, so I think I made up for it though. So
because it was like the 5th round or something, it was an absurdly high round to be drafting.
Yeah. Well, man, I think Josh Allen is going to be a lot better than people think he is going to be this year. Man. He just needs to get more.
David, how do you feel about this? David, how do you feel about
he can be a fantastic quarterback. The
This
Bills
is not
have gotten better, man. Overall, across the board, they're better than they were last year. They just need Allen to chill out a little bit, put his feet down, and throw it accurately. And if he can do that, he's going to be a phenomenal talent. So
I'm going to win the league.
Yeah, I think the Bills got a lot better this offseason. I do not think Josh Allen got remarkably better this offseason. So we're just going to have to see.
It rides on the back of Kevin. So, I mean, really, we have nothing to lose here.
That's true.
So.
That's true.
Yeah. No, that's pretty cool. I'd say, my favorite pick of Kevin's team. Oh, man.
Wait,
that's a tough
what? Of my team?
Yeah.
What about your own
team? Oh, my own team? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you could go off of my team too, but
No, I'd say, man, the surprising pick was actually, who am I thinking here? My favorite pick. Okay. My favorite pick is probably Justin Jefferson from Minnesota.
Yep.
Interesting. Okay.
I think he's going to take off this year. He's just he's really freaking good. So I have him stashed right now. But I think, man, when October rolls around, he'll be my guy. And then my favorite pick is probably DeAndre Hopkins, landing on pick 18th overall. And I still have I could pick up DeAndre Hopkins. I was pretty stoked about that.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. We'll have to see. Yeah. Well, and I'm not sorry. We'll have to see about Justin Jefferson. That's, we already talked about it a little bit, rookie receivers.
Yeah.
And in a Gary Kubiak offense, he might not see a ton of targets, but
he'll see very explosive targets though.
Mm-hmm.
Gary Kubiak's great with that, play action, get the ball, to that player. Now Adam Thielen is their number one option, but he's kind of old. And he's his best years are probably behind him. So Justin Jefferson really resembles how Stephon played in Minnesota, and he had some fantastic games. So I'm just really excited to see him play. But I usually go big on rookies, man. I got Jonathan Taylor and Jerry Jeudy as well. So I'm hoping these guys.
Yeah.
Oh, and I got the San Francisco defense.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I got the Pittsburgh defense. I was pretty.
Yeah, you got 2 picks before me? Yeah, that was bullshit.
Yeah. I was surprised they were still there. I was looking at them as my next pick, 18 picks or whatever after I had just picked my last pick, because I was you got to wait basically 2 rounds if you're in that position before you pick again. So I was pretty pleased when they were there for me.
No, most definitely.
I saw him there. I'm like, I'm 4 picks away. These guys are still, I can't believe it. And then here comes Matt strutting along like the Falcons fan he is and says, no, screw you. I'm going to do what I want. And I'm Canadian, so I'm not your buddy pal and all that jazz.
No, I want more money.
Hey, guys. Sorry, go for it. What?
It just happens, I was going to say let's look at Jared's team because Jared is ranked to finish last.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm not surprised he didn't have
So,
gray colored or cheat sheets in front of him. So
right.
Why don't you look at Jared's team? I'm going to look at Jared's wife's team.
Oh, okay.
Team,
Oh yes. So
and we'll kind of
and I
compare.
hope you guys watching are having fun with this. We're just we're kind of BSing right now, which is why it shows Bourbon Broncos no BS, but
It's mostly BS.
Yeah, I haven't heard. Unfortunately, I haven't heard any comments from anybody about how bad or good maybe their fantasy teams.
we still have 23 viewers right now, so
That's
we'll
true.
keep
Let us
pressing,
know.
I guess.
Yeah,
But
come on,
let's
guys.
compare Jared's team to Jared's wife team, who this is her first time doing fantasy football, and I
Yeah.
think
I think she's
Jared's
got a
wife
great
has.
team.
Yep, she sure does.
Mahomes, Barkley, Mixon, Smith-Schuster,
right.
Calvin Ridley, Noah Fant, AJ Green. Like,
I was pretty mad when she got Joe Mixon. She got him in a like
A
fourth
steal.
or fifth round. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it was like 2 picks above where I was gonna
Yeah.
snatch him up. So yeah, she
Yeah.
got a really good steal on him. What do you got on Jared's team?
oh man, Jared, like Drew Brees, pretty good. Clyde Edwards-Helaire on the Chiefs. I think it's a great pick.
That is such a big gamble to me.
It's a gamble, but it's a high winning gamble, right? And he's a terrible gambler, so maybe he'll win.
That's
one.
true. Yeah.
Maybe if he had listened to Ragers, our new podcast. Sorry, I had to do the plug there.
wanna
But
be a
yeah,
good gambler,
if he had actually
go
done
Ragers.
that, maybe he's
So-
been a better drafter.
He was on Ragers, but he's never been a great listener.
Probably not even listening to us right now. Anyway,
Nope.
so
Probably
James
not.
Conner, I don't think James Conner's going to finish the season as a starter. Mike Evans, pretty good. Courtland Sutton, pretty good. Evan Ingram, pretty good. But I don't know. I'm pretty unimpressed.
Yeah, I don't know. I got to
Overall.
give Marticella's team the upside there.
Oh, most
Juju
definitely,
Smith-Schuster, Calvin Ridley, Noah Fant, AJ Green is your flex player.
I mean,
And
he's
then
been hurt.
Yeah, but as your flex player, who you can easily swap in for one of David Montgomery, Devontae Parker, or Brandon Cooks, who are all on her bench, like that's you're in a
that's pretty
decent
good.
spot. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're in a pretty good
No,
spot.
I think she got beginner's luck, and she's going to roll with it for
Yeah.
sure. She got a great team. Now we had an auto drafting team, a team that just picked because we couldn't find.
Don't even get me started on how much it picked right before me every other round. So it royally screwed me over twice.
I remember that. You were furious.
Yep.
I was pissed that he picked up Kyler Murray. I wanted Kyler Murray.
Yeah. I think
But
Kyler
other-
Murray is going to explode this season.
Oh man, with the receiving core. Oh, dude, DeAndre Hopkins, Christian Kirk, Larry Fitzgerald, Jared.
He could
Love
easily
you, buddy.
Lamar Jackson 2.0, but better at throwing the ball.
Yeah,
Like, yeah.
yeah. But he's,
crazy.
I don't know, he's going to be really, really fun to watch, man. I think the
Yeah.
Cardinals are going to be sick. Their defense is looking promising too. But no, it's going to be an exciting one for sure. But I'm down for this fantasy season. I like my team. Do you guys like your teams?
I like my team.
You do.
I do
You have
too.
a nice team, man.
I
always
think
say
I
that.
have enough
Let's
depth
see.
that's going to help me through any injuries or illnesses players might have. So
Because your depth comes from like shitty teams.
Right. It has to. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what happens, right? So it's like you're kind of
Right.
stuck with players that are really unproven.
Right.
But
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of
It is what it
rookies
is.
on my depth chart. A lot of, guys that you're kind of hoping will take that next step this year. At least on the bench. But that's what your bench is
Yeah.
for.
yeah, that's what the bench is for. But we'll see. We'll see.
Mhm.
It's gonna be interesting though. Like with just the new year like this, like it's kind of weird making a fantasy team not knowing if you can really stay invested in it.
Right. Yeah.
What's
Absolutely.
gonna happen, right?
Now, last season I didn't stay invested and I had no good excuses. So that's not, the good excuse was I was losing a lot of games. So
right, exactly. Kevin was beating you, and so therefore, well, crap, I must really suck.
Yeah.
But yeah,
and I like we were talking about, Kevin, I get to the first game of the season this year, so it's going to be a good early test
Right.
for me to see how emotionally invested I should stay.
You know what happened to our
Josh
league last
Allen
year?
destroys you. It's gonna be fun.
I proposed a trade. I had I had Lamar Jackson, and I wanted to trade him for Baker Mayfield to somebody else in like the first week, and they turned me down. They said, "Hell
Lucky.
no!" Oh yeah, you kidding me? Week 5, he sends me the same trade offer back, and I was like, "Haha, no, too late." But boy, did I dodge a bullet, man! Holy
Man alive.
yeah.
Okay, guys, we're gonna go around the horn one more time really quickly. I do want to give a shout out to the only Chiefs fan I know who gives who loves the Broncos slightly more, but they still consider themselves a Chiefs fan. I don't get it. But Linnea, who's been watching here, and Andrew wants to hear our thoughts on the Chiefs. I think we can all agree it doesn't matter if they won the Super Bowl; they still suck.
Baby
But with
Chiefs are
that
gonna be
being
good,
said,
man. Oh man, yo, Mahomes gonna light it up this year.
I got-
They're running
because you
game.
have
They're running
you have
all the
Kermit the
receivers.
Frog, Mahomes poster doesn't mean you have to keep.
No,
you know.
man, he is the greatest. He's like Mike Tyson already.
Look,
Kermit the Frog.
I'm not gonna rag on anything that Mahomes does because he's a magical human being who does magical things with a football, and it bothers me. But
Bothers me greatly.
yeah, but the other side of that coin is, oh, great, the Chiefs have won Super Bowl in 50 years. All right,
Ooh.
yeah.
So what, when it's 2070, okay, and
So did the Patriots
2069,
in 2001.
and they win their third Super Bowl, we'll be okay.
Yeah,
We'll all
actually,
sit around and
you know.
say, it's been 50 years, you finally deserve one, pat on the head, okay.
from a serious standpoint,
Yeah,
it does kind of suck that this year continuity is going to be so much more important just to having early success, and the fact that the Chiefs have so much continuity. Thank you.
Yeah.
At all the skill positions, they've got
Yeah.
all the same guys coming back at head coach. They've got the same scheme in place. That to me spells, 14-2, 13-3.
As the floor.
Yeah,
Right?
it's just going to be another one of those seasons that we're just going to have to deal with as a Broncos team. So yeah, it's going to be rough to watch Chiefs games, but hell, we could take a surprise. We could. I would.
Listen,
I think I'm going
there's-
to predict the Broncos a win at Mile
Oh,
High
man.
against the Chiefs this season. So if nothing else, if that comes through, that's a win.
Yeah. No,
But-
listen, I
You
feel
never
like
know.
the Broncos are a team that can absolutely beat the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Now, without Von Miller, I'm going to put a little asterisk on it.
No,
but I
okay, hold
still-
on.
No, hold on. I still think that the Broncos offense is dynamic enough and explosive enough to keep up with the Chiefs offense. So we might play the Chiefs and it might be like a 38-42 type of game. You know what I mean? Like where it's just like we're going shot for
Sure.
shot. But I think that I don't know, the Broncos we're built to try and stop Mahomes. So I wouldn't be surprised at 1-1 or,
If we go shot for shot with the Chiefs at any point during this season, I will be flabbergasted. That will, to me, be a huge sign of
I
offensive
think
progress.
it's really possible.
I think it's very possible.
Really
Oh,
possible.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. By the time we play them, 6 weeks in the season? I can't remember exactly, but we're going to have our feet under us by then.
Yeah.
We have a couple tough games early on, but I don't see why. Look, if I was a Chiefs fan, Linnea, and I was looking at this Broncos team, I would be sitting here saying, yeah, we have a fantastic team and Mahomes is dynamite. But, this young Broncos team, they might be giving us trouble and kind of being that thorn in our side for the years to come. So, because honestly, there is some promise with this team. Now we have to go out there and actually prove it, right, Linnea? And I'm just going to keep name dropping her because she's honestly a Broncos fan. But anyway, okay.
Yeah.
Hey,
Until the Chiefs win a Super Bowl, then you should see your Facebook page. But we'll talk. Yeah.
Hey guys, before we go around the horn one more time, a couple quick plugs. Check out our post off-season podcast. We have our pre-game podcast coming out here soon. Listen on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, all those major places, and a couple others as well. We also have our pre-game show coming up on Monday night, as well as our halftime hash. Those are all back. We got the Tuesday night shows here. We're going to bring back the Monday night Orange Weekly After Dark shows. So here we are in full swing. Football is back, and the Broncos are playing the Tennessee Titans on Monday Night Football. Also, on the 20th of September, David and I are going to be calling our first game ever from Colorado Cork and Keg, which is where I am right now, right off the highway in Castle Rock, Colorado. Come by, tell them that Orange Weekly sent you. Get half off your first drink, and we have a giveaway coming up. So lots of fun stuff. We really want to send out a thank you to Centennial State Insurance Agency, who is sponsoring us. They are your go-to for every and pretty much all insurance needs. that you have, car insurance, homeowners insurance, all that stuff. Reach out to them. They'll give you a competitive rate and give you that touch of just, they're not just some big agency. They actually care about who you are and what you're going through. So reach out to those guys. Numbers below. So with that being said, David and Matt, we got the Titans coming up in week 1. We all need this game. I know there's been some bad news today, but we're finally here after what feels like a century. So Matt, we'll start with you. Big thoughts, some closing thoughts, and we'll move on.
Keep your expectations under control for this game. Like, this is going to be essentially preseason week 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
So be ready for a few mistakes, be ready for some sloppy football.
Yeah.
It's going to, the winner of this game, I don't think it's indicative of the rest of the season. If we lose, doesn't mean we're a bad team. This is just week 1. It's going to be rusty, but I think we can win. We're explosive. There's a lot of young, great players that I'm really excited to see. And, we lost Vaughn, but the rest of the defense is fantastic, and you got to have faith in them. Like, they're still going to be a great unit. So it's going to be a really good game. And, we beat them last year. Let's do it again.
Yeah. And one thing about tempering expectations playing off of Matt, I think, is a really, really good idea. If we lose this game, that doesn't mean we're a bad team. If we win this game, that doesn't mean we're a good team. Yeah. If we go out there and tear it up in the passing game, Drew Lock goes for 350 plus and 3 touchdowns, etc. Again, I want Broncos country to kind of just temper their expectations a little bit. I don't think that if you have a good statistical passing game against the Titans, that's going to be indicative of this offense is ready to just take off now. Just wait, guys. It's the weirdest offseason in recent memory. It's you're going to see sloppy football. Yeah, maybe ever. Just hold on and bear with it. That's my kind of advice as we go through this. Whatever you see out there, bear with it. And because we're going to see some good Broncos football this season. I have absolutely no doubt about that in my mind. Whether we're going to see it week 1 against Tennessee, I kind of doubt. Yeah.
Kev, what about you?
No, I think you guys hit a couple major points here, and I don't want to step too much further on the pregame podcast, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher. No matter what happens, and I think it kind of goes back to any game 1, right? Weird things happen week 1. Yeah. That's just the case, right? This team has a lot of growing to do. So you may see a game where, look, everything's firing on all cylinders, and we go into the next week and we just look like we're falling apart. That's what happens when you have such a young team and a rookie quarterback and just a lot of changeover. And we're missing our number 1 guy, more than likely, on defense. And so that means the only player from Super Bowl 50 will be on the field, and that is McManus. And that's going to hurt terribly. So, this team has to figure out who they are. And what I'm looking for is not necessarily a week-by-week kind of picture, but where we are right now and at kickoff on game 1, but when we get down to week 17 and whatever happens by then, but where have we gone from point A to point B along that route? And that's what's going to set up my expectations for the next couple of years. You know what? If we do fantastic by the end of the season, we've grown a lot. I might reclaim that title of being the most optimistic person here at Orange Weekly of, you know what? Doesn't matter. We're not mathematically eliminated. We got Drew Lock. We're going to be fine, right? And I'll take that back from Jared. So that's where I'm looking at this is, yes, I'm so happy football is back. We got fantasy football back. The Broncos will be on TV. That's fantastic. But where are we now? And I want to keep that in mind for when we get at the end of the season. And that's really what I'm looking for.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Before we finish up, guys, one last note. If you're ever thinking to yourself, how can I help this podcast? What is the best thing that I can, besides sending us each a check for $10,000? Because I'll tell you what,
or just giving me a hug. I prefer hugs.
Just a long
$10,000. I want your $10,000. Sorry.
Yeah. You know what? And Kevin, get Kevin a hug. It should be pretty high on our list of priorities. But so if you're thinking, how can I help Orange Weekly? Easiest thing you can do for us is just tootle on over to Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star review. That helps our visibility so much. It helps us reach other fans so much, build our viewership. And that's what we really want. We're not here for ourselves. We're here for you. So if you're thinking of anything you can do for us this season, Just do that, and you'll be a step above all of our other fans. Linnea with one
Very
last
true.
comment. It's an old comment. It's Go Chiefs, and nobody here is going to echo you on that because boo. But
Go Chiefs.
damn it, Matt! I just said, and now. All right. Maybe if I had traded you Julio Jones before the podcast started, we wouldn't be in this position. But I'll take that.
If you trade me Julio Jones, part of that trade is I will not talk about Mahomes for the entire season.
Well, now I don't believe
David.
you even a little bit.
I don't believe it either, but I think it's worth taking.
I am intrigued by that proposition. So.
All right.
Here, we can't leave this up much longer because people I think we're a Chiefs thing, and that's gross. Okay, guys. Hey, all of you who have been watching this whole time, you're fantastic, guys. This is why we do this, is to talk to you guys, not at you guys. So thanks for tuning in. Matt and David, appreciate you all. We got some podcasts coming up. We got game night coming up on Monday. I'm glad we're here, guys. Glad we're here.
It's good to be, bad news today, but it's good to be somewhere where we're talking about, hey, football's going to happen.
Football is happening right now. So good stuff. I guess even Linnea, if you want to post this, that'd be fantastic. But we always end everything on a strong go Broncos.
Go Broncos.
Go Broncos.
Take care, everyone. Have a good night. We'll see you later.